I'm back with a Hunter build guide for you guys today, and it is an exotic class item build, but no, it is not a liar's handshake build. This is something so much better. By the time you're at the end of this video, you'll be a nuking king, just blowing everything away that's in your path. And yes, this is a prismatic ignitions build, so let's get started. Starting with your super, I will go with Deadfall or Golden Gun. Golden Gun is a great super to use as a swap to Celestial Nighthawk whenever you're doing stuff like raids. However, if you don't have a great shot and you're really just trying to kill a lot of enemies at once, Shadow Shot Deadfall works really well as the weakening that's going to synergize with this build. Next, I'll go with Gambler's Dodge, and what that does is recharges your melee every time you dodge around the enemy, and it's kind of forgiving for how close you could be to that enemy. After that, I'll go with Withering Blade, and the reason why is because it'll give you 2 charges of Withering Blade, as well as they slow anytime you hit them with the Stasis Blade, and this travels up to about 3 or 4 people, so it's a really strong super just to get some extra hits in for damage. After that, I'll go with Swarm Grenades because this will synergize with the rest of the build. This will give you Scorch stacks as well as giving you extra ignitions that just synergizes even better with this build. Editor's note from Future Mall here. In this upcoming clip, I said Gambler's Dodge a lot, and I actually meant Gunpowder Gamble. If you're listening to this, leave a comment and say Silly Mall. However, work with me because I still have fun doing this video. Thanks. As far as your aspects, I'll go with Gambler's Dodge, and the reason why I use Gambler's Dodge is because every time you use a shuriken, you will debuff an enemy, and that will give you more charges to your Gambler's Dodge, as well as every time you hit them with your grenade, you will also get more stacks to your Gambler's Dodge because they're weakened through the Scorches as well as the ignitions. Just imagine almost infinitely getting Gambler's Dodge, and the only thing is stopping you is the cooldown. And trust me, the damage of this build is amazing. For the next aspect, I'll go with Stylish Executioner, and the reason why I use this is because it grants you invisibility, which gets you out of a lot of bad situations, especially when hunters don't have a strong go-to heal off of Prismatic. This also synergizes with your Withering Blade, which you have 2 of, so one of those attacks, no matter how many times you get it, if you remember, will always weaken an enemy. And weaken in this game is amazing, especially if you could do it to bosses. Going into my fragments, I'll start with Facet of Courage, and because your Arc, Solar, and Void abilities will deal increased damage to targets affected with darkness debuffs. So every time you hit somebody with your Withering Blade, regardless if it's weakened or not, you will do increased damage with your Gambler's Dodge as well as your Swarm Grenades. And so the way this loop works is you could hit them with your Withering Blade and then you'll get more damage out of your Gunpowder Gamble, or you could get your kills with Gunpowder Gamble and get invisibility just to weaken them to attack them again with another ability. It synergizes so well. Next, I'll go with Facet of Blessing to just have some health regeneration every time you kill somebody with a melee attack, and because you get Withering Blade so often, especially in mid to low level content, what I've noticed is Hunters is more of a damage dealing class, so this will be one of your main healing abilities. And Withering Blade does about 13 to 15k damage each, so you really want to use this against red bar enemies to get your health back up, even in high level content. Next, I'll go with Facet of Ruin, and that's because you want an increased area of effect with Solar Ignitions because this is a strong Solar Ignitions build, as well as a increased burst in your Stasis Shatter. And when you see what I'm pairing this gun with this specific build, you'll see why this works really well. I feel like both Facet of Blessing as well as Facet of Purpose is really self-explanatory, as Facet of Blessing will just give you more melee or grenade abilities if you use light or dark damage, and that's just by using 2 different weapons or abilities. And then Facet of Purpose will just give you Overshield because you're in Void, or Restoration because you're in Solar. No matter what, you'll have that extra survivability. And the reason why I do not go with Facet of Protection is because you get that extra survivability with stylish executioner and going invisible. If you just wait a little while, you'll get your health back or pick up orbs or whatever. I do also want to note that with Facet of Blessing, if Bungie ever fixes Facet of Mending to where it also works with Gunpowder Gamble, I will take this over Facet of Blessing every day because this is a grenade heavy build. Now going to the bread and butter of this build is Spirit of Verity. And the reason why Spirit of Verity is so strong is because if you compare this with a good special weapon, and typically with this type of content, the special weapon that you'll like to pair it with is either the Aberrant Action if you're using Swarm Grenades, or the Call if you're using the Grapple Melee, because I believe Grapple Melee also synergizes with Spirit of Verity. And just match that with the Dragon's Breath, which will consistently get you additional kills. It will always proc Spirit of Verity because you will always have ignitions on the ground, so you will also always get your Gunpowder Gamble because you're using solar weapons, as well as it's getting 100% damage buff. And when I say 100% damage buff, the main damage is doing 100k to a boss or any rank and file enemy, while it's still doing additional ignition damage through other means, and it's just taking off chunks from enemies no matter what. I will also generally target to pair this with is Spirit of Immos Light, because when you use your Gunpowder Gamble, you will still get your melee abilities back because they consider that a use of the ability. So all of this synergizes into an infinite ability spam, along with using your class ability, along with using your dodge ability to get more melees. You will never not have any abilities to use. Now, Spirit of Verity will work with almost any build, so you don't necessarily need Spirit of Immos Light. And if you feel as if you're not doing too well in hard content, you can also pair this with Spirit of Inmost Light and Spirit of Sarachne, because you will still have that infinite ability spam, but you will also get Woven Mail, which is an additional 40% damage reduction, while using Nightfall, which is another 50% damage reduction. You will very rarely die, however you'll do a lot less damage. And what the hunters are, they're killers, and they love doing damage. So that's why I chose Spirit of Verity over anything like the Liar's Handshake, because that feels like a lot more of a boring build to just go around and punch everything. Then what I would pair with this build is Bold Endings with Headstone. And because this season there is no reason to have Dragonfly, I will also pair it with Golden Tricorn, which will give you additional damage. Now, you could take a look at my artifact mods. Some items of note is I have Creeping Chill, which will give you a burst of slow whenever you attack a target that is slowed or frozen, and that synergizes with the Bold Endings because Headstone will do a burst of slow, as well as your Withering Blade will also slow a target. So whenever you run out of special or heavy ammo, you can always go back to the Bold Endings, and it synergizes so well with the remainder of your abilities. I do have Threaded Blast, but you could swap that out for Overload Swords or Incendiary Rifle rounds so that you could utilize that for boss damaging phases. I also have Logic Reductor that will extend the Radiolaria damage to vets. I will couple that with Winning Hand, and this is the reason why there's no reason to have Dragonfly on Bold Endings, because Winning Hand will give you that explosive damage that you don't really need to have two of. So once this season's over, maybe I'll think about switching that to Dragonfly, but as of right now, I'm keeping it as it is. Solar Fulmination will also give you additional damage to your ignitions, so that makes your ignitions as a ×5 Verity user with Gunpowder Gamble going to even higher heights, because that's what's giving you that extra damage that you see on the screen. And then lastly, I'll have Shield Crush, because Transference, the grenades as a hunter kind of sucks, so just stick with Shield Crush. And if you're doing some general bossing and or want to switch to a void based grenade, I will also have expanding abyss. And as far as mods go, I have them on the screen. You could take a screenshot of them, or you could check out the link that I have in the description box below. What I was specking to as far as your 3 stats would be resilience, then discipline, then recovery. And if you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. I have more builds coming out for both the Titan and the Warlock here shortly. And if you want a nice Titan build that doesn't require class items, check out my last video that I have in the link below. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.